If we do nothing, everything will go extinct.
You'll find a solution.
You are my solution.
This might be very hard for some people to understand.
The modern landscape of media has its fair share of problems. An area of particular offense is how it is received, largely because of how it is reviewed. One of the many ways a review can go wrong is in its subjective nature. Subjective thoughts and feelings have their place in personal experience, but they are not a review of quality, nor do they help others to better perceive goodness or evil in something. The main reason cited explicitly or implicitly is based on the belief that there are no objective truths about art, just opinions. So why bother trying to give more than just your personal impression of a work? The second and far worse problem is that people need new and beautiful stories, but have become increasingly comfortable settling for mediocre ones. The job of critics is not to give personal impressions or to only praise the macabre, the art house, or the high-minded art, but to assist the average perceiver of art in their ability to decide whether it is worth it for them to see or to help them see a deeper level of the art they may have missed. The large gap between audience and formal critics is the result of the formal critic class forgetting their job and the casual viewer giving only their opinion, but is not in the slightest bit unresolvable. Both are looking for the same thing, but in different parts of the medium. A story, like all art, should attempt to inspire, warn, or otherwise direct attention to what's good and how to achieve it, or what's evil and how to avoid it. Thus, the Dicastery has seen fit to assign me as an Inquisitor to demonstrate the refined, practiced art meant for the separation of orthodoxy, heterodoxy, and simple ignorance, and apply that refined practice to moving pictures. The one I'm to review today is Article 1. Did it tell the story well? This is the ways a story is perceived. The visual, the auditory, and the structure of it. It is less important than Article 2, but it plays greatly into how Article 2 is perceived. There are in fact occasions where Article 1 is such an impediment to the viewer that Article 2's value can't be appropriately understood. Part 1. Visually. Section 1. Cinematography. Subsection 1. Camera. Niall Obstat.
Thank you.
Niall Obstat means no obstacle, which in turn means that it is not judged by the Inquisitor to have a negative effect. There wasn't enough to warrant good or evil explanation of this category. Not everything earns praise, some things merely avoid prosecution. Subsection 2. Lighting. It gave a sense of the vast blackness of space, which gave a meaningful distinction to the ship's white, brightly lit environment, and both contrast with Earth's muted lighting, which nicely signified the dying sun. Occasionally, there were moments of oversaturation of color on screen. It pushed a viewer out of the moment, or overstimulated the visual sense, making it hard or impossible to have the intended impact. Section 2. Sets. The sets give a sense of what they are very well. The Hail Mary is sterile looking, functional, and practical. The only obstacle is that we don't spend enough time exploring the Hail Mary, full of grace. After all, you don't name a ship that and then not let us explore its halls. The Earth sets look cobbled together or industrial, which is exactly what they need to look like, as this mission is a cobbling together of nations, scientists. The only issue with the sets on Earth are that they look a little too small. It's pretty clear these are sets, not real places, which hurts believability because it's hard to believe when they are on the aircraft carrier that is all the space they have. This likely could have been fixed by just having more locations for scientific demonstrations. Section 3. Costumes. Ryland's dorkier outfits and the casual and professional attire, spacesuits and lab coats are handled very well, but Grace wears too many early in the film, and it's visually distracting. The other exception is Eva. She needs to look more professional or imposing. Someone chosen to run a project of this scale should visually communicate competence or authority. Her wardrobe does not sell that at all. It reads like generic German politician, and while that might be realistic in some fashion, it hurts the character. She has to be unique to do this. Section 4. Editing. The editing was fine most of the time, but at critical moments it could be fast and choppy. It was trying to build tension in those scenes, but it ruined them instead. The rapid cuts risk giving the impression that something is being hidden. Section 5. Special effects. Subsection 1. Practical effects. Sometimes look cheap. The telescope going in and out early in the movie is a particularly bad example. But usually it was great, immersive, realistic, and well-crafted, particularly the rocks. Subsection 2. Digital effects. Niall Obstat. A lost art, it would seem. Section 6. Action. Subsection 1. Stunts. The stunts looked real when the editing didn't impede you from seeing them. Part 2. Auditorily. Section 1. Foley. The sound effects worked well. The noises that people, rocks, and mechanical parts made all sounded diegetically realistic. Nothing was out of place or overdone. Section 2. Music. Subsection 1. Diegetic. The song chosen for Eva's karaoke was thematically and character appropriate, but too on the nose to provide depth. Her performance, however, was... Subsection 2. Non-diegetic. Paragraph 1. Score. Musical composition, of which I am no expert, and there are other inquisitors for that, is better when it runs in tandem with the emotions that the story intends for you to feel. This can be too simplistic of an explanation, however, as just matching the feeling can be a mistake if the story needs depth, or if there is a need for dissonance between what the character is feeling and what the reality of the situation is. There is not a one-size-fits-all, but there is a one-size-that-fits-none. Now on to this score. An instance of this done poorly is when Grace loses control of the ship. The chaotic sounds and shrill tones drive too hard rather than amplifying the moment with its tension and stakes. It pushes the audience out of the moment and makes them want to cover their ears. In an opposite case, when Grace walks the halls to see the aftermath, a beautiful lament, matching the fluting tones of the rocks from earlier. Section 3. Audio mixing. When a score or sound effect stands out, it should do so with intention. This was not always the case. Part of the reason the score didn't work as well as it could have was because it was too loud at parts. It could be that I'm old, but I hear most of the tasks I'm given just fine. Part 3. Story. Section 1. Direction. In general, scenes function the way they intend to. The story is clear and the development of the plot is evident, but the overall impression left something to be desired. There isn't a gravity to the events, the stakes, or any kind of existential dread shown on the characters' faces, except perhaps one scene. Visually, the movie is what it needs to be, but tonally and dramatically, the movie wanted to be more lighthearted. That ended up causing too much of a conflict. The movie had a hard time coming out of its more humorous tone until later in the movie when Grace loses control of the ship, at which case it did become more serious. But that doesn't last very long. The movie is rather hopeful, but it didn't quite earn a sense of that hopefulness in order to create catharsis for the audience, because it lacks that initial tension, dread, and overwhelming implausibility that it needed in the flashbacks. Section 2. Acting. The actors do well with the lines they are given. There was an issue of them all occupying the same monotone space or humorous tone of the protagonist. The same expressionless faces or deadpan jokes worked for the three main characters, but the rest of the cast showed too little personality. Section 3. Dialogue. The dialogue worked. It was very often mildly entertaining by being funny, witty, or a nice combination of a few of these.
You know, back on Earth, if you discover something, you get to name it. You were technically the first one here.
Yes, the name is Medium Rough Texture Circle Planet.
Okay.
The problem was that there was too much of it. Grace is a motor mouth as a character, but Rox fills in every moment he isn't talking. When it doesn't cease, it doubles down on making the movie sound more like a comedy.
It's almost like you don't care if I die. Hold on, you have to talk about it?
The consensus here is that it would be preferable if you did not die.
The movie has funny lines, but with so many it diminishes their value and gives no room for the movie to breathe. The movie's subject matter is quite serious, but the constant humor undercuts the nature of the deadly serious consequences of failure. Silence is not the enemy. There was no need to abandon it with the invention of talkies. Section 4. Writing. Subsection 1. Plot. The plot is of a lone astronaut with amnesia who's been sent in an effort to save Earth because
the sun
Is dying.
every star was infected by its neighbor except one, which is why
We build a ship to go there and find out.
It's 11.9 light years away.
almost everything has an explanation if you pay close enough attention, but they can be unsubstantiated lines or under-explained facts that make it difficult to believe or to understand what is happening. The plot develops appropriately in the movie, but it gets heavily distracted from by too many jokes and gags. We used to mean something different by that. In the end, Rylan appears to choose to stay on Arid, the alien homeworld of his new friend. Any hero is not required to return home, but he is advised, or in the case of some, required, to do so, even if only for a time, in order to provide closure for himself and others. Closure may be robbed of a person or story for not doing so. The hero will often find it impossible to reintegrate completely when he comes home. He is forever changed. This is the source of the wandering samurai or cowboy. Changed by his adventures or who he has become, he does not feel comfortable being around forever. The travel cost for Rylan returning home would be steep indeed, and he would be leaving the best friendship he has ever known. It is wholly up to the protagonist to choose in this particular case. He is a hero and has earned the right to choose. The audience is not robbed of catharsis because we know humanity will survive, and they know who saved them. Grace is all but unique, because he has no moral obligation to return home, and might even have a better reason to stay. Subsection 2. Character. The characters are a bit mixed. They're all believable, but their vaguely humorous lines and monotone reactions make them blend together, lacking some desperately needed personality, except for the leads.
I keep going this way? This room's boring. Science, save Earth, save Aerith, good slam.
Grace and Rocky stood out as funny, and Eva stands out because she's very serious, but these are low bars to clear in terms of good character writing. Where the character writing does shine is in Grace's arc. Rocky operates as an excellent example of virtue whose moment of sacrificial love changes Grace in a stunning way. Grace is unusual and very interesting as a reluctant hero.
Explosions in the sky, bending space and time. Hero.
Paragraph 1. Relationship. There's an asterisk to this subsection that must be addressed first. We don't know of any aliens, and we certainly don't know of their capacity to share our ability for relationship. You can try and hand-wave the relationship between Rocky and Grace, but you'll end up in one of two places, de-emphasizing humanity and its uniqueness, and our ability to love each other in a special way, or treat it as a metaphor, a reflection of what Grace needed in order to be courageous and do good. Subsection 3. World building. In this instance, the story is hard science fiction. It gains exponentially greater believability, relatability, and inspires more people in a more direct way the more grounded the explanations are. You can call it a flaw of the type of story Zone making, but it is also true if the level of grounding needed is achieved, then it gives the story a higher value than some others. This idea of a higher value is a concept which I will address in another video, if they keep making me do these. There are scientific fiction assumptions the movie uses, but they aren't off the wall, except for the rock in the room. You do have to suspend your disbelief to allow for Arid and its inhabitants to be possible. There is no biological explanation given in the movie for these creatures, much less any explanation for Iridian's high level of consciousness, or even less for Rocky and Grace's ability to communicate in a very short time.
Hi, Grace.
These imperfect explanations are not devastating to the story. There's a great deal you can accept in any story without understanding it. It largely depends on how the story presents those elements and what story it intends to tell. In the flashbacks, we get production of the Hail Mary and its technologies.
Following on from Dr. Grace's discovery, we've built an IR emitter set to the wavelength of CO2, which attracts the astrophage to the drive, then rotates outward. We increase the IR, the astrophage get excited, thrust the ship forward,
but not nearly enough time to explain the challenges that it would take to make the viewer believe humanity came together and achieved something incredible. This is just a demonstration. It looks good in terms of raw power, but it's hard to say it convinces the audience this is needed to get them to toss SETI. This is a solution that is marginally explained to a problem that is never explained. And this is the most explanation for any single technology about the Hail Mary in the movie. Things like the AutoCare medical robots, the scientific equipment in Zero-G. Without a few lines to say who developed what or how that company made a breakthrough, it's hard to appreciate the effort and theme of humanity coming together through our creativity and ingenuity. And the global politics are never mentioned even once.
Oh no, I'm not brave enough for politics.
You want to talk politics?
That's not what I said.
No, of course not. Because you don't see it, do you?
The movie does sidestep the politics slightly by placing us mostly in Rylan Grace's shoes, which is clever, but it isn't completely excusable when one of the main points of the story is to show how humanity came together to do this. Section 4. Pacing. Pacing can be a serious impediment. It can make or break an otherwise well-written story. Movies can and have been watched with bad visuals, bad audio, and poorly written plots, but poor pacing is one of those things that can hamper the perception of a movie so much that no one remembers it, and it becomes a subject only for film nerds. Ryland Grace's trauma drinking and goofing around at the beginning could have been spent on flashbacks or doing scientific work on the Hail Mary. Leaving some or most of that frivolity on the cutting room floor would have improved the movie's pace, as it drags here and there. But, and this pains me to say,
Oh, there it is.
the movie also could have stood to be longer and even included that frivolity if it had also included more measured scenes to allow for a building of tension or loneliness. There was an almost good one, but it came when Grace couldn't even remember anything. If they had used those measured scenes, there also wouldn't have been a need for the really dumb subplot where Grace wants more personal space. Article 2. Was it a story worth telling? The worth of a story is the most important part. It matters whether the story intended to instruct, inspire, or inquire after a subject that brings people closer to the good. It is better if it is a beautifully told story, but it is meaningless if it is only beautifully told. Primary theme. The courage to sacrifice takes the right moment and the right reason. Most people find this to be true. The means and object of that choice come with a variety of faces. Secondary themes. A secondary theme is an idea inside the movie that isn't the primary takeaway, but is something that either comes from the primary theme or is a separate idea altogether that needs to be discussed inside the review. These first two are the former, not the latter. The movie plants an idea of two possible ways a person can choose virtue, one of which is true and one of which is not. We'll start with the one that's not. Secondary theme 1. If you think the person will choose the right thing in the situation, you can force them to do it. As if by nothing more than necessity and belief of one person and another, that person will work against what they want for the greater good. This is not only not true, but dangerous. What you decide one way or the other should be honored, unless people in legitimate authority over you tell you you have to. It's all well and good that Grace chose the right thing when he was sent out, but Eva's decision to make him go against his will could just as easily have been disastrous. He could have cracked under pressure, or been petty and not completed the mission. It makes for an interesting character and a hopeful story, but there is definitely an assumption being made here in one character's mind that is not particularly called into question. Virtue can't be believed out of someone. This is the movie's weakest point. The flash forward to Eva at the end of the movie undercuts her callous nature. She made a choice out of necessity, not belief or virtue. She may have been proven right in the end, but it was only by grace that it was so, not by her decision to send Ryland out there despite his choice. It is for this unclear interplay that the theme can't hold up to the movie perfectly. It makes a movement of belief against the will of a person, which is coercion, not faith. Secondary theme 2. The right one. The choice to be virtuous never ceases. Grace was not made to do the right thing by Eva's belief in him. He wasn't even made good by his best efforts aboard the Hail Mary. He was good by his decision to make a sacrifice of his life to save another when he didn't have to. In other words, when he chose to give of his life rather than having that sacrifice thrust upon him. It can't be made to happen, but grace is always available, especially to those inside of Mary's care. Secondary theme 3. A single human being is capable of extraordinary things. Using just his mind alone, he can
save the world.
There's a lot of truth to be emphasized in the power of the mind. It can do so much we don't ask of it. It can't save our souls, but it can certainly save our lives and the lives of others. Secondary theme 4. Humanity as a species is capable of extraordinary things when it works together, even if it isn't direct violent annihilation. Despite what most people would like to believe about this, the odds of it being true are much messier. Humanity has managed to keep ourselves from infighting on some occasions and work with and across boundaries, but rarely for a long period of time. This is one of the more interesting alien threat frameworks precisely because it's more esoteric and less violent. People tend to rally around a banner when an external threat appears, or humanity as a species is threatened, violently. In Project Hail Mary, the threat is much more realistic. It is an existential, no less alien threat, but it suggests a collective effort of intellect rather than human will and fortitude and strength of arms. It carries an interesting implication of whether humanity is capable of cooperation on such a level. It's a good question to ask, and one which Project Hail Mary is hopeful about, for perhaps the right reasons. The execution of that idea, however, is underdone. Barriers have to be overcome for us to believe, and a lot of what is overcome in this movie is assumed rather than shown or even told on the collective humanity level.
This is a science fiction story that does not lecture or preach about the evils of humanity, and is actually quite hopeful. While it loses some excellence by swaying toward modern entertainment over substance,
Project Hail Mary is a story that, rather than simply reflecting the truth as we see it, it seeks to show what we could be. It gives hope to people, makes them cheer at our collective efforts.
the book, written by Andy Weir, much of what doesn't work as well in the movie is expertly done there.
Politics aside, this is more than just the book or the story itself, but the cultural impact.
Put a link in the description.